Hi, sports supporters. Well, earlier I did a video where we found out that the WNBA owners have submitted a new proposal. I laughed because I was like, what if they changed like 4 things in it and then sent back basically the same proposal? You never know. You never know. That could be exactly what happened.
The warning didn't come through a press release. It came through whispers, locked group chats, and one sentence that hit the league like a loaded gun. If they don't move, we will. By the time fans realized something was wrong, the WNBA was already trembling on its foundation. Cameras were pointed at the NBA All-Star Game, but the real drama was building in hotel hallways, private lounges, and late-night calls where voices shook with anger and exhaustion. Caitlin Clark stared at her phone as message after message poured in from players across the league. Veterans, rookies, faces of franchises, all asking the same thing in different words. Are we really doing this? Years of smiles for sponsors, years of being told to wait, years of promises that never quite materialized had finally curdled into something dangerous. This wasn't about one contract anymore. This was about respect, control, and survival. Angel Reese felt it in her chest before she saw it online. A leaked memo, a reported owner's stance. Revenue share talks stalled. Again, the timing couldn't have been more explosive. NBA All-Star Weekend. Maximum spotlight. Maximum leverage. And suddenly, the unthinkable wasn't unthinkable anymore. A strike. On the biggest stage tied to the men's league. A message no one could ignore. Inside league offices, panic wore a calm face. Kathy Engelbert's name floated through every conversation like a question no one wanted to ask directly. Team USA players went quiet. Agents started calculating losses. Owners held firm, betting the players would blink first like they always had. But this time felt different, because behind the smiles and sponsorship photos, something had snapped. And as the All-Star lights grew brighter, the countdown to a decision that could shatter the WNBA forever had already begun. The tension didn't explode all at once. It seeped into everything. Practice gyms felt heavier. Locker rooms went quieter. Even the laughter during warm-ups sounded forced, like everyone was pretending this was still just basketball when it clearly wasn't anymore. The leaked revenue numbers had done something irreversible. They didn't just expose imbalance, they exposed indifference. And once players saw the gap in black and white, there was no unseeing it. Caitlin Clark felt the shift immediately. Her name was already attached to ratings, ticket sales, television deals. She knew her value, but the numbers showed something colder. That the league was comfortable using her popularity without committing to structural change. Teammates started pulling her aside, asking what she'd heard, what her agent was saying, whether the rumors were real. Caitlin answered carefully, but inside she felt the pressure tightening. If this turned into a full-blown labor war, her face would be everywhere whether she wanted it or not. Angel Reese was less careful. She was angry. Not loud on social media. Not yet, but furious in private. She'd watched owners praise growth, while rejecting meaningful revenue share increases. Watched executives talk about patience while players burned out bodies and careers for salaries that barely matched the league's marketing slogans. The All-Star Game looming on the calendar felt like a provocation. Smile for the cameras. Celebrate the game. Don't ask too many questions. Angel wasn't sure she could do that anymore. Group chats turned volatile. Messages came in waves, screenshots of CBA clauses, leaked negotiation summaries, anonymous tips claiming owners were unified in holding the line. Some players wanted to strike immediately. Others were terrified. Missing games meant missing checks. Missing the All-Star spotlight meant risking public backlash. The league had always counted on that fear. This time, fear was colliding with resentment that had been building for years. Paige Buchers read everything twice before responding. She'd seen how quickly narratives twisted. One wrong sentence could turn solidarity into controversy. Still, she could feel the responsibility creeping in. Stars didn't get to sit this out. Silence could be read as betrayal. Speaking could paint a target on her back. She sent one message to the group chat, measured but firm. If we don't stand together, they won't move at all. The replies came fast. Hearts. Fire emojis. Then doubt. Always doubt. Behind the scenes, agents were scrambling. Some advised patience, warning that striking during NBA All-Star Weekend could be framed as ungrateful or reckless. Others saw leverage and pushed hard. The owners, they said, would never expect it. That was the point. The league had always operated on the assumption that the players needed the system more than the system needed them. That assumption was cracking. Kathy Engelbert's office became a war room. Calls stacked on calls. Owners demanded reassurance. Sponsors asked whether contingency plans existed. Networks wanted guarantees that their programming wouldn't be disrupted. Publicly, the league projected calm. Privately, they were counting votes. Who was willing to go all the way? Who would fold at the last minute? Who could be pressured quietly? Kelsey Mitchell felt the squeeze from both sides. As a veteran, she understood the stakes. As a leader, she felt the obligation to protect younger players who couldn't afford to lose momentum. She listened to stories, players juggling second jobs, players rehabbing injuries without long-term security, players being told to be grateful for opportunities that came with invisible ceilings. The anger wasn't theoretical. It was personal. Social media sensed blood in the water. Fans began speculating before any official word dropped. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag pay the players, hashtag WNBA strike, hashtag All-Star Showdown. Comment sections split instantly. Some fans cheered the idea of players finally pushing back. Others accused them of being greedy, of risking the league's future. The familiar script resurfaced, but this time it landed differently. Players were watching, taking notes. Angel Reese finally cracked the seal. Not with an accusation, but with a question. At what point does growth mean sharing? She posted, no tags, no context. It went viral in minutes. Screenshots hit every platform. Talk shows debated her tone instead of the substance. Owners noticed. So did players who had been waiting for someone to say something without saying everything. Caitlin called her agent late that night. She asked a question that hadn't mattered before. If this goes all the way, who loses more? The answer wasn't comforting. Players would lose money. Owners would lose control. The league could lose face. Or gain a backbone. No one knew which outcome would win. Meanwhile, a confidential owner's memo began circulating among select media figures. It painted a picture of unity, of fiscal responsibility, of concern for long-term sustainability. What it didn't mention was how close the vote margins were, or how afraid some owners were that a strike tied to the NBA's biggest weekend would shatter the illusion of harmony between the leagues. The memo backfired. Players read it as condescension. Fans read it as deflection. Aaliyah Boston sat with teammates after practice, the room unusually quiet. Someone asked what would happen if the All-Star Game started without WNBA players present. No appearances. No panels. No cross-promotion. Just absence. The idea hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Absence was power, but it came at a cost. Aaliyah felt her stomach knot. She also felt something else, resolve. As the weekend crept closer, the countdown became impossible to ignore. Airlines booked, hotels filled, schedules finalized, and still no agreement. Owners held strong. Players held meetings that ran past midnight. Votes were taken and retaken. Unity wavered, then solidified, then wavered again. Late one night, a message hit the main players' chat from an anonymous number that somehow had access. Just one line. They think you won't dare do it on their stage. The message spread faster than any press leak. Screenshots flew. Rage surged. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about money or contracts. It was about defiance. And with the NBA All-Star lights about to turn on, the WNBA players were staring at a choice that could redefine their league forever, or tear it apart in front of the world. The morning after the anonymous message spread, the league woke up to a different temperature. It wasn't panic yet. It was something sharper. Awareness. Owners knew the players had seen through the bluff. Players knew the owners knew. And that mutual understanding turned every interaction into a staring contest no one wanted to blink first in. Caitlin Clark landed for a promotional appearance tied to All-Star Weekend, but the energy around her felt wrong. Smiles were tighter. Conversations stopped when she walked by. She could feel people measuring her reactions, wondering if she would be the one to tip this whole thing over. Her presence alone was leverage, and everyone in the room understood it. When a league executive casually mentioned how historic the weekend was going to be, Caitlin nodded without committing. Historic could mean celebration. Or collapse. Angel Reese was already done pretending. In a closed-door meeting with other players, she didn't yell. She didn't dramatize. She spoke calmly, which somehow made it worse. She talked about years of promises that never made it into contracts. about watching the men's league celebrate record revenue while the women were told to wait for the next cycle, about how patience had become a weapon used against them. When she finished, no one rushed to respond. Silence settled in like agreement. Paige Buchers felt the split growing sharper. Some players were still afraid of public backlash, afraid of lost checks, afraid of being blamed if the league stumbled. Others were past fear. They were exhausted. Paige tried to bridge the gap, reminding everyone that unity didn't mean recklessness, that strategy mattered. But even as she spoke, she could feel momentum pulling them forward whether they were ready or not. Behind the scenes, owners held their own emergency calls. A few pushed to reopen negotiations quietly, worried that a strike during NBA All-Star Weekend would humiliate the league in front of its biggest partner. Others dug in harder, convinced the players would fracture at the last second like they always had. The phrase "hold strong" kept surfacing. So did another, said in lower voices, "Don't reward this." Kathy Engelbert was caught in the middle, publicly optimistic, privately cornered. She urged patience, urged dialogue, urged calm. Players heard delay. Owners heard reassurance. Neither side fully trusted her anymore. Every statement she released was dissected for hidden meaning. Every pause treated like a signal. The role of commissioner had never felt so exposed. Social media went feral. Fans began tracking players' movements like detectives. Who showed up to which event? Who skipped which appearance? Every absence became a headline. Every presence became suspicious. Commentators debated whether striking on such a visible stage would help or hurt the cause, often without asking the players themselves. The noise grew so loud it started drowning out nuance entirely. Kelsey Mitchell watched younger players spiral under the pressure. Some were calculating rent. Some were worrying about roster spots. She reminded them why this moment mattered. That short-term fear was exactly what the system relied on. Her words steadied some. Others still looked unconvinced. Unity was real, but it was fragile, and everyone knew it. Then a new leak hit. An internal owner's email chain surfaced, carefully anonymized but damning in tone. It discussed optics management during All-Star Weekend and contingency plans if the players escalate. One line lit everything on fire. They need us more than we need them. The screenshot raced across platforms before takedown notices could even be drafted. Angel saw it and laughed, not because it was funny, but because it confirmed everything. Caitlin saw it and felt something harden inside her. Paige saw it and realized the middle ground was disappearing. The email didn't just insult the players. It dared them. Emergency meetings multiplied. Player reps took informal votes. The numbers shifted hour by hour. Some who'd been hesitant now leaned yes out of anger. Some who'd been yes hesitated under pressure from agents and sponsors. The math never felt settled. It felt volatile. Sponsors started calling players directly, carefully framing concern as support. Networks quietly asked whether talent would still appear on panels. The NBA side remained officially silent, which only made everything louder. Silence from power is never neutral. Caitlin received a call from a veteran who'd been through previous negotiations. The advice was blunt. If you go halfway, you lose. If you go all the way, you change things forever. There was no roadmap after that. Just consequences. Angel posted again, this time more pointed. Not a threat, a statement of values. She spoke about labor, dignity, and visibility. She didn't mention the strike, but everyone heard it anyway. The backlash came instantly. So did the support. Her notifications became unusable. She didn't turn them off. Paige finally broke her silence more clearly, aligning herself with the collective without spelling out the next step. It was enough. Fans took it as confirmation. Media ran with it. The pressure doubled overnight. Inside one hotel ballroom, a final late-night players' meeting stretched into the early hours. Voices rose. Tears surfaced. Numbers were rechecked. Someone asked what would happen if they walked. Someone else asked what would happen if they didn't. No one had a clean answer. At 3:17 a.m., a vote was taken. Not formal, not binding, just a temperature check. The result was close enough to terrify everyone in the room. Outside, All-Star Weekend signage was already up. Bright, polished, ready for celebration. Inside, the WNBA stood inches away from choosing disruption instead. And as dawn broke, one thing was clear. The owners were still holding strong. But so were the players. And in less than 48 hours, one side was going to learn how expensive that stubbornness really was. The final hours before NBA All-Star Weekend arrived with a strange, suffocating calm, the kind that only exists right before something breaks. The hotels were full. The banners were up. The cameras were already in place, waiting to capture smiles, crossovers, unity. But beneath the polished surface, the WNBA was vibrating with unfinished decisions and nerves stretched to the limit. Caitlin Clark sat in her hotel room staring at the city lights, her phone face down on the table like it might explode if she touched it again. She'd spent the night fielding calls from players who sounded steadier than they felt, from agents trying to protect careers while pretending this was just business, from people she trusted warning her that once this line was crossed, there would be no quiet way back. She understood the subtext. If she moved publicly, the league would never treat her the same again. If she didn't, some players would never forgive her. Angel Reese was pacing a hallway 2 floors down, phone pressed to her ear, voice low, but shaking with controlled fury. Another sponsor had called, gently reminding her of obligations and timelines, of how sensitive moments require careful handling. Angel ended the call early. She wasn't interested in careful anymore. She was interested in whether the league had been honest with them at all. Every promise she'd heard now felt like a delay tactic designed to wear them down. Paige Buchers sat with a small group of players in a private suite, the air thick with tension. No one was shouting anymore. The anger had matured into something heavier. Fear mixed with resolve. One player admitted she was terrified of being labeled ungrateful. Another said she was more terrified of being invisible again once the spotlight moved on. Paige listened, nodding slowly, realizing this wasn't about convincing anyone anymore. It was about deciding who they were willing to be when the lights were brightest. Across town, owners convened one last call. Some were confident the players would blink. Others weren't so sure anymore. The leaked emails had shifted the balance, exposing arrogance that fans couldn't unsee. Still, the prevailing strategy held. Stay firm. Don't concede under pressure. If they fold now, they fold forever. That logic carried weight in boardrooms. It felt much less stable against a potential public confrontation. Kathy Engelbert released another statement early that morning, emphasizing ongoing dialogue and shared goals. It was immediately drowned out by speculation. Players read it as more waiting. Fans read it as avoidance. Media read it as confirmation that nothing had been resolved. The gap between messaging and reality widened dangerously. Social media exploded as players' movements were tracked in real time. A missed appearance here. A canceled panel there. Every absence was dissected. Commentators began speaking in hypotheticals that sounded more like predictions. The phrase player-led disruption started trending, followed closely by WNBA strike. The league's attempt to maintain control of the narrative slipped further away with every refresh. Kelsey Mitchell stood in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby watching younger players huddle together, whispering like they were sharing secrets instead of weighing decisions that could alter their careers. She remembered earlier negotiations, earlier disappointments. This felt different. The unity wasn't perfect, but the anger was shared. That mattered. Then the first Real crack appeared. A well-connected reporter posted a vague update hinting that multiple WNBA players are reconsidering all-star appearances pending last-minute developments. No names. No confirmation. It was enough. Phones rang immediately. Agents panicked. Owners demanded explanations. The league scrambled to contain something that had already escaped. Caitlin finally turned her phone face up. Dozens of unread messages stared back at her. One from a teammate simply read, "If you walk, I walk." Another said, "I can't do this without you." The weight of it pressed down on her chest. This wasn't about being a star anymore. This was about being a reference point. Angel Reese posted nothing. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Fans noticed. So did the league. Speculation hardened into expectation. Paige sent one final message to the main group chat, reminding everyone that whatever happened next would define how the league treated them for years. No one replied. They didn't need to. As the opening All-Star events drew closer, players began making quiet choices. Some opted out of appearances without explanation. Others showed up but refused to engage beyond what was contractually required. The contrast was stark. Unity didn't look clean. It looked messy, human, and dangerous. Inside one secure conference room, league officials debated whether to issue consequences if players escalated. The idea was floated, then softened, then quietly shelved. Punishment in this moment could backfire spectacularly. Everyone knew it. No one wanted to be the person whose name became synonymous with retaliation. Angel finally broke her silence, but not online. She spoke to Caitlyn directly, voice steady but raw. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't demand leadership. She said one sentence that lingered long after the call ended. "If they see us hesitate now, they'll never take us seriously again." Caitlyn closed her eyes. She knew Angel was right. She also knew the cost wouldn't be evenly distributed. Some players would lose more than others. Some would recover faster. The system was built that way. Minutes before a major all-star media event, a quiet but unmistakable development rippled through the venue. Several WNBA players simply didn't show up. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. Cameras panned awkwardly. Hosts filled time. Social media lit up instantly. The league's phone lines flooded. Owners demanded updates. Sponsors demanded answers. Fans demanded clarity. And still, no official word came from the players' side. Because once you say it out loud, it becomes irreversible. As the NBA All-Star lights blazed on and the world waited for celebration, the WNBA stood on the edge of a moment that could redefine power in women's sports, or fracture it under the weight of its own courage. And somewhere backstage, a final message was being drafted. Not to the league, not to the owners, to the public. And once it was sent, there would be no turning back. This is the point where watching turns into choosing. Because what happens next won't be decided in boardrooms alone. It will be shaped by who pays attention, who speaks up, and who refuses to let this moment get quietly rewritten. Leagues survive on visibility. Power survives on silence. And right now, both are being tested in real time. If you believe this is just about contracts, you're missing the real story. This is about leverage. About whether the people who fill arenas, drive ratings, and carry the game on their bodies are allowed to demand more than applause. It's about whether growth is a talking point or a promise with teeth. And it's about what happens when players finally realize the stage they've been given can also be used to push back. Don't let the narrative get simplified for you. Watch how quickly this gets framed as disruption instead of desperation, as risk instead of resistance. Pay attention to which voices get amplified and which ones suddenly disappear. Notice who calls for patience and who benefits most from delay. That pattern isn't new. What's new is that the players are no longer pretending they don't see it. If you support fair revenue share, transparency, and player agency, make that support visible. Talk about it. Share it. Challenge the lazy takes that reduce this moment to ego or entitlement. The league is listening, even when it pretends not to. Public pressure has weight. Silence has consequences. And if you want to know what happens after the cameras stop rolling, who blinks, who holds firm, who pays the price, and who walks away changed, stay connected. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Follow the story beyond the headlines. Because the real decisions won't happen on stage. They'll happen in the fallout. This isn't the end of the conversation. It's the line in the sand. And once it's crossed, there's no going back to the way things were.